I'm Matt Falco, and joining me today is Carl Roushenberg.
Yep.
It is May 12th, 2009. Thank you, Mr. Roushenberg, for coming and for being with us today and sharing your memories.
Right.
Where and when were you born?
I was born July 28th, 1913,
And whereabouts were you born?
in Baltimore County.
Okay. And how long did you live in Baltimore County?
Well, 96, 95 now. Oh, I guess I lived there for 40 years, 50 years.
And then you moved?
Moved up here.
Okay. And now, did you work up here, or did you work in Baltimore?
I have a farm.
Oh, okay. And did you raise your family on the farm?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, could you just describe a little bit about kind of your farm life and things like that with your family?
Well, I'm a sheep farmer, and I raise corn and hay, and that's about all I did. Corn, hay, and sheep,
Okay.
and chickens.
Okay. And how far from here was your farm?
From here, from my place to Westminster, 17 miles. And I don't know what it is up here, another 5 or 6 miles,
Okay.
maybe about 20 some miles.
Okay. And where did you learn those skills, that skill set for farming and things like that? Did your parents teach you?
No,
when you were young,
an old man taught me how to farm. He was 80 some years old. And I followed his say-so.
Really?
Yeah.
So
very
did you
good
grow
friend.
up on the farm, or?
Well, I had a couple of acres, that's all. Not a real farm.
Okay. And that was in Baltimore?
Baltimore
Or
County.
Okay. Now, could you just describe a little bit about your childhood, and you just kind of day-to-day life and things like that?
Well, I went to school. I got out of school. I had to get a job. My parents didn't have no money. And I set up pins in the bowl, and I make $3, $4 a night. And then I got on an ice truck, and I made $2 a day carrying ice. And then got off that job and went on the railroad. I was about 20 years old then. And stayed there until I got on the police department. I went on the police department for 22 and a half years, retired. So here I am.
So when you were in the police department, were you working up here, or were you in Baltimore?
No, I lived in Baltimore County.
Oh, okay. And that's where you did that, and then you retired up here. Is that correct?
After the war was over and everything, I had to give up, But I still farmed. In fact, until the kids went to school, they helped me out. My wife, she helped me out. She's gone now.
Now, in terms of the war that you just spoke of, what was the impact of the war on your life?
I was on tugboats.
Okay.
I went out. We never went across the ocean, but we went out. I've been across the ocean 14 times on ships. But then after I got married, my wife suggested I stay home a little bit. So I went into a tugboat. I worked tugboats, and then I had to go out to sea to pull a ship in that had been bombed. Well, I did that. That's the only time I know I was out to sea enough that I could be torpedoed. The German torpedoes were right there. They were inside them. I was outside of that. They never bothered the tugboat because it wasn't worth a torpedo. They just let us alone. And then we took this big ship, and it had been torpedoed. And we took her to Broadway. You know where Broadway is?
Mm-hmm.
Laid there the rest of the war, and that was 2.5 years she laid there at the pier. She had a hole in her, and you could throw just room in it.
Wow. And it's a ship that had been torpedoed?
It had been torpedoed,
Wow.
but it didn't sink. It stayed afloat. It was a big ship, and it stayed afloat. So they called a towing company from New York, and they weren't going to come down and pick it up, so we had to go out there. We had to tow it in. It couldn't run. It had to be towed. And they towed it to Broadway, and there's where it stayed for 2.5 years. The war was about over then.
Wow. And you would operate the tugboat?
No, we didn't operate. I was a fireman on a tugboat
Okay.
and deckhand.
Okay.
Now, we had captains and mates and everything on there. It was a big boat, big tug.
So you do that on a day-to-day basis?
Every
you'd work
day.
on the, oh, yeah?
7 days a week.
And how long would you be out at sea? Would you have to pull the boats in from
That,
far out?
that particular job was about a 2-day job. One day going down, one day coming back.
Wow.
Coming back was a little bit slower. That boat was 700 feet long.
Wow. And how did you get into that job? How did you find that job?
Well, I was in the big ships going to sea, and I decided I wanted to go across the sea. So I went. This ship went to Germany, France, England, Belgium. That's what we went back and forth. I made 14 trips over there.
Wow. So these trips were longer than 2 days.
30 days.
Yeah. Wow.
30 days, sometimes 35 days, according to the weather.
Wow. And would you spend time over in, say, Belgium or wherever you...
In Belgium, we fueled up. And when we fueled up, I had a chance to go ashore. And I stayed ashore maybe 3 or 4 hours, get back on the ship again, because we'd leave, They'd leave without me if I didn't get on it.
Now, what was when you spent time in Belgium and things like that? What were things like, especially with the war and things going on?
Oh, I like Belgium. Had beautiful things. They had different monuments and a nice place, like a marketplace. That was right on the waterfront, and it was very nice. And they had a little boy, a statue. And was sitting right in the middle of the parkway. And everybody would go over and drink. And we'd take a pee. And I thought it was so funny.
That's a famous statue in Belgium. That's
Yeah.
a lot of people crowd around.
Well,
it.
everybody
Yeah.
goes over and take a drink. And well, same way in France. You go to France, you didn't have no toilet for men. They went into a little cupola, and they take their business right there, take a leak right there. That was funny too. And the water ran down that gutter all the time.
Mm-hmm. Did you enjoy your time in Europe when you spent it over there?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. Now, just kind of going back a little bit, in terms of your early life, what would you say was kind of one of your fondest memories of either your childhood or kind of when you were at a younger age?
Well, I got out of school, and my teacher was a good friend to me. And as I got out and passed her out, when they gave me my passport, or that I passed, she said, do me one favor, don't go to high school. I said, why? She said, you don't know nothing about arithmetic. And they won't take you. I said, oh, okay, I'll be going. So she passed me, and I took off, and I never went back. I went to night school later on, but not long, about a year.
So you didn't like arithmetic very much then?
I liked it, but I could add and subtract, but I couldn't divide and multiply. And my wife had to teach me that.
How did you meet your wife?
How did I meet my wife? At a barn dance.
Oh, okay.
She was dancing, and I danced with her. The first dance, I told her, I'm going to marry you. She said, ha, ha, ha. I fooled her. 56 years married.
Wow. And what year did you get married?
I got married in 40, I think it was 43, 44, something like that.
And that's when you were living in Baltimore? You lived in
Baltimore County.
Baltimore County with your wife?
Yeah.
Okay. And what did your wife do?
She's a housekeeper.
Yeah?
She took care of and helped me bale hay. She worked like a man out in the field.
And did you have any kids?
3.
Okay. And what are they doing now?
Well, one is retired. He lives in Carolina. The other one lives in Emmitsburg. and he works for the county, and my daughter works for NIH. And they're all married, so we've been doing pretty well, you know. And I retired in 66, 67.
Now, how often do you come to the senior center to hang out and do things
Any
here?
chance I get.
Yeah?
Yeah, I like it.
So,
I don't. We haven't been here for about a month this time. Everybody, my friend was sick. I was sick. Weather was bad. Couldn't make it.
wow.
So we stayed home.
Huh.
Listened to TV.
Do you have a lot of good friends and things here?
I think everybody's my friend.
That's great. So what if you could describe it, what would be your typical day here? Do you come here generally pretty early, or?
About this time, catch the music when it starts, till about 3 or 3:30.
The band that you listen to, is it the Senior Moments? Is that what they call the band here?
They got two bands here.
Oh, which one's your favorite?
And no favorite. I like them both.
Oh, yeah? How are they different? Do you like, they play different music, or?
They play string music. They don't have no bugles or nothing like that. They play string music and things like that. They sing. They're good singers. That's 2 or 3 hours enjoyable. I get that worries off my mind.
That's great. And what else do you do here? Do you just kind of like hang out with the rest of the people? There's some pool tables over there. And
Yeah, we got to go back as soon as it's 3:30. We got to go home.
okay.
We got, I got a man who helps me run the farm, but he wants to go home too. So, I don't have time to. We don't have time to fool around.
Mm-hmm. And you still live on the same farm that you moved up here?
Yeah.
And do you?
42 years already. 43 years.
Wow. And I guess if you were to put things kind of into kind of a little bit of a perspective, have a lot of things changed around here in terms of the lifestyle and things like
Yeah,
that?
this is a new building. We used to go to the old building over there, and this is the new building. It's a whole lot better. We like it.
How come it's better? It just has a lot more.
Not more room, and better. The big hall down there,
That's great.
Yeah,
It's really great.
we didn't have that over the other place.
Yeah. And do they have different types of clubs and things here?
They hold bingo on one day or stuff like that, and they keep it busy.
Do you get a lot of people for bingo?
I don't go to bingo.
No. How come?
I wouldn't win anyhow.
And what's your I guess your most your fondest memory of living up here and on the farm and things like that? What would you say is your best memory, or something you remember the most?
Well, it's to make a success out of farming. When you ain't got much money, you do the best you can, and we made it. I worked on a job. I had a lot of that money went to the farm. I raised hogs. I had like 25 hogs at a time. We raised them, sold them. They helped.
There was something mentioned about bootlegging. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I can tell you about that. I was 17 years old, and I went to the barber shop, and I said to the barber, "How much owe you?" He said, $25. I said, $25? Yes, I ain't even got $25. He said, "How much do you want to pay me?" I said, I don't know, whatever you want, but no higher than $25. So he said, "I'll tell you what, I got a job for you." I said, "Yeah, I'll take it." He said, "I got a little booze to deliver." And I said, "Well, I never did that before." He said, "You'll be all right if you want to go for it. You got a car?" "Yeah, I got a car." It's 27 Chevrolet. And he said, "This week I got a load for you going to Baltimore." So he loaded me up. I went in, I said to my friend, "Spence, my car won't start. Will yours start?" "Oh yeah," he had a 28 Chrysler. But he had bad eyes. He could hardly see. And I didn't know that. He lived at my house too, because he couldn't get no job. So I filled his tank with gas, 10 cents a gallon, and took about 10 gallons. And then we headed into Baltimore. We're going down Pratt Street. You know where that is? Pratt Street to Charles Street. There was a big police stand there. And I didn't know that Spence didn't see him, but Spence run right under his arms. And I said, Jesus Christ, you almost hit that police. What police? I said, pull over. He's already blowing his whistle. So he pulled over. Said to me, where you guys come from? Halethorpe. I said, Halethorpe? Out there at that dump, you mean? I said, no, that's the farmland out there. It was at that time. He said, I think you two guys are the dumbest people I've ever seen. I said, you hit that right on the head. And he said, let me tell you something. Let me see some license. I showed him. Them days you had license that permanently, you didn't have to change them the rest of your life. Until they decided to get more money and they had to change that. So I showed him that, and he said, I'll tell you what, you didn't see me? I said, I wasn't driving, it was he driving. And he said, he didn't see you. He said, well, you missed me, but you almost got me. I said, well, we didn't mean to do any harm, but I said, if you'd say so. So I was acting stupid, you know. So he said, I'll tell you what, you go ahead and get your job you're looking for. He asked me what I was going to do. I told him, do a job, to get a job in Baltimore City. And I said, that's where I'm heading for now. And my friend here is driving, takes me down there. I had the whiskey in the back of the car, in the rumble seat, and it goes, chuckle, chuckle, chuckle. And the police kept listening. Then he thought it was gasoline in the tank, but it was the booze. I knew I was going to jail. All right, so he said to me, here's your license and your registration. Don't come back up this way. I'm going to lock you up as soon as you come back up this way. I'm going to look for you. I said, okay. So we went down there, unloaded the whiskey. I had over $100 in my pocket then. And I was a big shot then, you know. So anyway, we headed back up Pratt Street, the light, made a left on light. I said, go down to the 2nd Street down and make a right. We won't run by him, police. We got up Conway Street, back to Charles Street. Charles Street. There he stands. The police stand there. But he didn't see us. We were right on by him. So that was the end of the boozing trip. Then I got a job on a railroad.
What'd you do on the railroad?
I was head brakeman. And worked at the end front of the engine, on the old steam engines. And I had to get off, go to the telephone, tell them where we're going, and what we got on, what we need. And with the outside phones, you could hardly understand them. But I always got them right somehow or another. And that was all I had to do. Oh, and then I had to put the brakes on all those cars, wow. 96 to 100 cars.
Wow. Walk
right through the top of them.
Wow. Now, you did a lot of traveling with the railroad. Where would you go with it?
Only from Baltimore to Brunswick.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. And would you be hauling freight, or would you be
No, coming back we would haul coal.
Oh, okay.
Going up we'd have freight or empty cars.
Yeah. So no passengers?
Oh, no. It's all freight. And we go up to Brunswick, we stay there overnight, and then in the morning we had another trip back home again.
Yeah. And how long did you do that for?
Well, I was trying to get on the police force. So I told the guys I would stay there as long as I could until they called me for the police department. Park police, horseback. I got it. But the draft board says, get back on your job or we're going to put you in the Army. And the war was almost over, you know, but I wasn't going to take no chance. Then I joined the Coast Guard, and it was volunteer. And I stayed on there till the war was over, and then I got discharged from there. That was a good job. I liked that job.
Now, what'd you do with the Coast Guard?
Well, we had one of those PT boats, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I had one of them, and I became a boats's mate, and I had the right to drive one of them. And we go all around the harbor, check everything. If we seen something suspicious, we could either call somebody in or we would make arrests ourselves. And I stayed on there till I got on the tugboats. Maybe 2.5 years, 3 years maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And then I stayed on the tugboats, and that's it. That's pretty much what it is.
So did you like boating and things like that? Is that how?
Yeah, I
is that
like
what
to
you're-
boat. Yeah, I like
Yeah.
it and mind it. I like it.
Yeah. Now, do you have a specific memory with the Coast Guard that you'd like to share?
The only one I can remember is told watch for the people in Sparrows Point. They were stealing equipment out of Sparrows Point, and stop anybody that's doing it. So I had no radio on that thing, and we went down, and here comes this boat out from Sparrows Point, and I knew it was loaded. And instead of going up the bay, it made a right-hand turn, went up the river, and he was so fast I couldn't keep up with him. A big old boat I had was fast, but not that fast. So I couldn't catch him. I had to let him go. And then when he got to the bridge, I couldn't get under the bridge, but he did. And that's the end of that ride. I had to go back and tell him what I had found. But he was loaded with stuff. He stole paint and gas tanks and stuff like that. They stole all that kind of stuff during the war. And he was one of them. I never did see him anymore after that.
Would you see a lot of that around Baltimore when you were working with the Coast Guard? Would you see a lot of that kind of theft and things?
Well,
like
I only
that?
worked a couple of days a week with them.
Yeah.
I was volunteer,
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, they went one day, and the Maryland Dry Dock was on the other side of the river. And they had a complaint to the Coast Guard that somebody was stealing paint. So we went by there, and we had 2 FBI men on the boat I was on. And we stayed right there in the river and watched with glasses. They saw them throw the paint over in the barges. They locked everybody up there. Took the barges away and everything with the paint on it.
Really?
They got them.
Wow.
All we did was drive the boat. We didn't have nothing to do with it. They never even called us to testify because they saw it. They were stealing paint. There must have been 150, 200 gallon on there. And they do that every day. The shipyard had a lot of paint. So we just went along for the ride and drive the boat. And that was the end of that. I never had another occasion.
So you worked for the Coast Guard, and then you worked on the tugboat?
Yeah,
And
they let me work anytime I wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
So if I was like on a Sunday, I worked there Sundays. If it was on a holiday and we worked part of the day, I'd go there and work part of the day. Sometimes I got home 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night. So it worked out good though.
Did you prefer any one of those? Did you prefer the police job the most?
Oh yeah, that was make my living,
Mm-hmm.
I worked 12 hours a day.
Wow.
I got 1 day off every other week, and I got $1,200 a year. That's what I got. And I was on it 3 years before I got any raise. But then it started going up and up and up till I got over $30,000 a year.
Wow.
I think they're getting more than that now.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought it was good.
And you were a patroller? Was that what your
I
main
retired
job?
as a sergeant.
Sergeant? Wow. Wow. That's great.
Went up from corporal to sergeant and retired.
Wow. And then that's when you moved up this way, correct?
Well, no, I was up. I was still on the police force when I came up here,
Mm-hmm.
Woodbine. Yeah, I stayed up there until I retired. I retired in I think it's 1965 or 66, something like that it was. I've been retired a long time.
Wow. Well, thank you very much, Carl, for sharing your memories with us. I
Okay.
certainly do appreciate that. Is there anything else you'd like to share with us? Or?
Well, I could tell you a whole lot more, but it ain't so good to tell,
but we certainly do
I
appreciate it.
better keep it a secret, you know. I never stole nothing.
Right.
No, I never stole nothing. I didn't have to steal.
You saw a lot of people stealing things, though, right?
Yes, it wasn't as bad as it is right now.
Mhm.
No, we never stole. We didn't have no reason to steal. And I was hoping with the money I was making, even that time, you could get a loaf of bread for 5 cents,
Mhm.
pound of butter for $1.
Wow.
You know, things like that. So you didn't have to steal.
Mhm. Well, thank you very much.
All right, okay.